What's going on, Packer fans? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks for joining me today. Before I jump in, I just want to say a huge thank you for the 9,000 subscribers. Means a lot to me. We are on to 10,000 and hopefully we can do that sooner rather than later. But just a couple short years, we've been able to eclipse the 9,000 mark already. So super appreciative of that for all of those who have subscribed, or even those of you who are just tuning in every day. Means so much. I can't explain it to you. So I love talking Packers every day. I love doing this every day, and it means so much more. It is so much more fun when obviously we've got people listening every day. So thank you so much for that. Hopefully we can get to 10,000 sooner rather than later. By the way, if you're not subscribed yet, please make sure to do so. But enough about that. Let's jump into our main topic. It was a slow news day at 12:65. No real major news that came out of anything. So we're just going to talk about my main topic right away, which is this Packers rookie class, which quite frankly, I am insanely excited about. And before we jump into the rookie class, I think it's really important to note that the Packers philosophy in general is not a, hey, let's draft players to help us win right now. It is, hey, let's draft and develop and pick the best guys who are going to help us long term. And we will use our philosophy and organizational structure to develop these guys so that they can become the players that they're ultimately going to become down the road, which is hopefully going to be some very high-end players. This is how they've done things basically since Ron Wolf, 30 plus years. A little bit of a hiccup with Mike Sherman in the middle there, who wanted a little bit now of a win now type approach. But overall, 3 decades of draft and develop. And that's what we have to sort of judge this by. That being said, Green Bay's in a little bit of a unique situation right now where they are in a little bit more of a win now mode, but also they had some additional draft capital, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks before they traded that the second-round pick up along with their first second-round pick to get Christian Watson. But overall, they drafted a 24-year-old defensive lineman in the first round, which is a little bit more win now than usual. They usually like to stick to 21, 22-year-old players, or 20 in the case of Kenny Clark. But overall, we still have to look at this through the lens of, all right, what are these players going to develop into in a year, 2, 3 years from now? And that's what, quite frankly, has me so insanely excited. So we'll just go pick by pick, go over how these players have performed so far, but also where I think they're trending moving forward, which, like I said, ultimately is what I'm most excited about. So let's start with their very first pick, Quay Walker. So far in the season, he is a bona fide starter for them, starting right alongside Devonte Campbell, playing a ton of snaps. I have a plus 0.75 grade on him so far. And more importantly, what his trajectory is to me what maybe is probably the most exciting of anyone in this draft class. He's already playing a pretty impressive brand of football for a rookie who also should be noted, didn't play a ton at the University of Georgia. He was behind Nakobe Dean, and they played a lot of 3-3-5 looks at Georgia and just some really unique defenses. And Quay was not a player who was getting 7, 8, 900 snaps per season. He was sort of not a late bloomer, but they just had so much depth in the way that they played. Quay didn't get a ton of snaps. So where he's at right now, making his transition to the NFL, playing legitimate starting snaps on a very good defense, making plays, forcing fumbles this past week, and not fully, understanding the game to its fullest extent yet, I am so excited. And I mentioned this earlier this week. While I'm really pumped to watch 2022 Quay Walker right now because he's fun to watch, I cannot wait to see what 2024 Quay Walker is going to look like, because he's already a freak athlete. There's no question about that. But as he adds functional strength and as he starts to understand concepts and offenses and gets reps and his instincts are just going to continue to improve, now you're going to see this freak athlete flying around the field with the confidence and the instincts of a veteran player and not a rookie who's still caught in headlights a little bit from time to time. So he's going to learn how to take on blocks better. That's one of the things in his game that's missing right now. He's going to play more instinctual football, and he's already flying around the field, and he's just in his 3rd game as a rookie. You see that Georgia mentality in him where he wants to rally to the football. The perfect example of that is the forced fumble this past week where the play is behind him. He could have stopped. He could have turned around and been like, Adrian Amos has got that. No, Adrian Amos had it, but he turned around, rallied to the football, let Amos make the initial hit. He punches out the ball, and it is a massive turnover in that game. We're seeing that he has the ability to cover. We're seeing that he has the ability to get sideline to sideline. The sky is the absolute limit for Quay Walker, and he still has a ways to go. There are things that he is doing right now where, again, you see him just making some of those rookie mistakes. I said it from rookie minicamp, training camp, etc. There are going to be some high highs. There are going to be some, frustrating lows at times from Quay Walker, just because that's what a rookie inside linebacker goes through. But he has done a very nice job already of really avoiding, some of those really deep valleys, and the peaks have already shown out to be rather impressive. So already, like I said, love watching what Quay Walker is right now. By no means a finished product. And if you're getting a solid starter right now from Quay Walker as a rookie, you should be drooling over the fact of what he could become in a year or two from now, or even maybe by the end of this season as he gets more reps under his belt. Could not be more excited about Quay Walker's progression already and what I think he can become in a year, 2 years, 3 years for this Packers defense. Next up is Devonte Wyatt. Let's rewind, going back to the draft. They picked a 24-year-old defensive lineman, something that is not something they do at all. They obviously loved him a lot. He was a freak tester athletically, size, speed, strength, all of it. As far as defensive linemen go on this team, we can make an argument with Kenny Clark. I would actually argue, if everyone, let's just say everyone on the team, defensive line-wise, played with the technique and veteran savvy of Kenny Clark, to me, Devonte Wyatt's probably the best player of the entire defensive line, Kenny Clark included. That's how freak of an athlete he is. That's how strong, quick, powerful, and agile he is. Kenny Clark is winning because he is strong as heck, but he plays with phenomenal fundamentals, wins the leverage battle, has great raw strength, and just plays with great technique. That's why Kenny Clark wins over and over and over and over. And I'm not saying he's not a freak athlete, because he is, but not the freak athlete that Devonte Wyatt is, where he has that quick first step, great strength, and can just do really almost anything he wants at that defensive tackle position. But when they drafted him, I had some concerns on his tape from the University of Georgia. Overall, I was excited and anticipating what he could ultimately become. But I think the hope was that 24-year-old defensive lineman, University of Georgia, SEC, he was going to be able to come in and contribute right away. Rookie minicamps come, OTAs come, and Wyatt really didn't do anything. And it's not worth even mentioning at that point because the pads aren't on, and it's really hard to judge defensive linemen, offensive linemen until the pads come on. It just is what it is. And then training camp comes along, and he doesn't really do anything. And he was clearly the number 5 defensive lineman all throughout training camp. He had the great spin move on Sean Ryan at family night, which caused the pressure on Jordan Love. That was the great deep ball by Jordan Love down the field. But it was a phenomenal spin move that kind of went at least semi-viral in Packerland. But outside of that, didn't really do a lot. And I don't think anyone really wanted to make too much of it because A, it didn't mean a whole lot. It's just practice. But B, I think everyone sort of remembered Eric Stokes, another University of Georgia product last year, who really looked pretty awful at times in training camp. And then regular season came along and he was a really good corner. And you're like, okay, it is what it is. Some people just play better when the lights come on. What I saw out of camp and preseason from Devonte Wyatt, I'm like, I'm not sure that this is going to work. He played with terrible technique and his pad level was extremely high. He didn't play with leverage. He was getting moved around in the running game. And again, he's already a 24-year-old defensive lineman. It doesn't mean that he can't progress and get better, but you're like, this doesn't look the way that I think we expected a first-round defensive lineman to look coming out of Georgia, 24 years old, etc. So there was, I think, a little bit of concern there, but you never know what's going to happen when the lights come on. And then regular season starts and he's not really in the rotation. That said, in very minimal snaps, he has made 3 to 4 really impressive plays that has to be getting Jerry Montgomery and, Matt LaFleur and Joe Barry, thinking about getting Devonte Wyatt some additional snaps here. He had a fantastic pass rush move this week, late in the game against Hainsey, the center for the Buccaneers. Just kind of a snatch and pull, gets around him, explodes to the quarterback, great pressure, probably would have been a sack against almost any quarterback not named Tom Brady. Just a phenomenal move. Had a play against Minnesota where he gets a little bit out of his gap, but he screams down the sidelines and makes a play on a tackle, like, I don't know, 20 yards in the opposite direction, like just rallying to the football. Had another solid pressure in that game. Had a great play in this past game where he, I think he did like a quick spin move off the first offensive lineman. For whatever reason, there just happened to be another offensive lineman waiting for him. He basically got doubled on the play, which I don't think he was expecting, or is what you would expect. I don't think they, you would have thought they would have doubled Kenny Clark or somebody else on the play, but he beats his first guy clean, gets to the second guy, and then Brady had the ball gone at that point. But you start seeing these flashes from Devonte Wyatt that make you go, holy crap, like the talent is undeniable. Now, he still has a ways to go from a technique standpoint. Needs to play with better pad level, needs to get lower, needs to hold up better at the point of attack. You're not going to see the field in this defense if you are abandoning your gap and not holding up at the point of attack. You got to eat your vegetables first when it comes to, line play. If you're not doing the stuff on early downs, you're not going to get in on late downs and just get the pass rush glory. That being said, they should probably start putting him in on pass rush downs a little bit more. He's got the juice, and he has the ability to win one-on-one with a quick first step that just the Dean Lowrys, the TJ Slaytons, the Jerron Reeds just quite frankly don't have. So I do think it's time to start getting him some more snaps. I'm excited about his progression. I think we're going to hear a lot more from Devonte Wyatt as the season goes along, and I'm once again bullish on his long-term prospects. I think they are going to get a starter out of this pick. I think it's just going to take a little bit while he really learns the nuances of the game. But man, I'm telling you right now, once he learns to play with better technique, look the heck out, because he is really fun to watch and he can do some very special things on the football field. I think we could basically almost mimic the exact same things that we said about Devonte Wyatt, about Christian Watson. Listen, I know he dropped that first pass, but you don't just fly by. I know Patrick Peterson isn't as fleet of foot as he once was, but you don't just fly by Patrick Peterson with the ease that Christian Watson did without being a special player, or at least have the potential to be a special player. He's done that on a couple different occasions where Rodgers just wasn't looking his way, where he just flew by corners in his first two games. At minimum, I'm saying it right now, at minimum, he is going to be better than MVS, who, by the way, is a, starting wide receiver for the Chiefs that just got like a $10 million deal. Like at minimum, he is going to be better than MVS because he can stretch the field. But the difference between Watson and MVS is Watson is football fast. MVS is just fast. The difference being in like MVS, I think of like Corey Bradford back in the day as well. These are just like 4.3 40 guys who can run a straight vertical, kind of lanky and not really, great in and out of breaks, not really great, change of direction, not very agile, can't really cut on a dime. And against those type of receivers, you just kind of need to stay on top of them because he's not great out of his break and because he's not great at changing direction. If all of a sudden he cuts back on you, it's a little bit choppy at the top of the route and it takes a little bit of time for him to get back. If you're a corner, you're just like, all right, I'm just going to make sure he doesn't beat me deep. If he all of a sudden cuts in because he's slow out of his break and not that agile, I can get back on that play. And that's why we didn't see MVS have more success on some short and intermediate routes. Christian Watson has the out and up ability. He can challenge a receiver at full speed, change a direction, and then get back to full speed in a second. That's exactly what he did against Patrick Peterson and just left him in the dust. He also has the speed on end arounds, reverses, but he also has the agility that MVS didn't. He is football fast where MVS was just, track fast. And that's a big difference. And I believe that is going to pay huge dividends in taking the tops off of defenses and also in just some of those gadget plays. Also some of those just crossers where you can get the ball in his hands and he can do the heavy lifting. It goes without saying that he has to catch the ball. And I think it probably is going to go without saying that there's going to be some of those MVS moments where you're just like, dude, just make the simple play and don't have these boneheaded mistakes or boneheaded drops. I think that's going to be part of the game for Christian Watson. But I think as time goes on, he'll concentrate better. He'll eliminate some of that from his game. And I do think he's going to end up being a real legitimate starting receiver for the Packers. In the meantime, he's got to get healthy. He's got to catch the ball and he's just got to get out on the field and get more reps. But I said it before and I'll say it again. If every receiver in this draft reaches their ceiling, Christian Watson's the best receiver in this draft. And he's so special talent-wise that if he figures things out, it's going to be a nightmare for opposing corners in the NFC North and in the NFC moving forward. So extremely bullish still on Christian Watson. And I think we've seen some of the things that he has the capabilities of doing on a football field. Now it's just finishing the play and getting healthy and doing it on a more consistent basis. But very bullish on Christian Watson as well. Sean Rhyan, got some concerns here. I loved his tape coming out of UCLA. I mean, I really thought, all right, Sean Rhyan's going to be the guy to break this third round streak of terrible draft picks, basically. Comes to camp, doesn't look like he's in great shape. The technique's not good, needs a lot of work. I think there was some thought originally that he might be able to be a right tackle and a starting right tackle for the Packers. Not only did that not develop, he doesn't even look ready to contribute at guard. This is going to be a true redshirt season. I asked the question when the Packers had Bakhtiari and Jenkins and potentially Runyon out with that concussion. We knew who the 5 would be in that scenario, but like if one of the next 5 went down, I legitimately asked. I don't know who they would have put in next, whether it would have been Sean Rhyan, Rasheed Walker, or Caleb Jones. I don't know, but I kind of think it wouldn't have been Sean Rhyan. I think almost Rasheed Walker and Caleb Jones might have been ahead of him in that scenario. Now, that doesn't mean that Sean Rhyan still can't be good down the road. It just means that this is a true redshirt season, and Sean Rhyan has a lot of work to do if he wants to get into this rotation and conversation moving forward. And even though he's a third-round pick, he's even with the Rasheed Walkers and the Caleb Jones of the world right now to try to fight for that, probably ninth offensive line spot. So a lot of competition there. And, I don't think we know what Sean Rhyan's going to become quite yet, but the early returns are not great. And if you told me that, one of the guys early in this draft didn't turn out, right now it's trending towards Sean Rhyan. A lot of time left. He could still end up being a really sound player for this team. And if there's any group of coaches that can develop a player like that, it's Adam Stenovich, who I know is offensive coordinator, but I'm sure still helping with that group. And of course, Luke Butkus as well. So a lot of time left, but early returns on Sean Rhyan are a little bit concerning. Then comes Romeo Doubs. He's already a starter. He's going to continue to be a starter. And the question just becomes, how high of a ceiling does Romeo Doubs have? I put this together. This is just for fun. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that he's going to be better, worse, or anything, with these receivers. But these were James Jones, Greg Jennings, Devonte Adams, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and Romeo Doubs stats through the first 3 games. Not sure how well this is going to be on a video, but we'll do it anyway. Romeo Doubs, 16 targets, 14 catches, 137 yards, and a touchdown. James Jones, 21 targets, 14 catches, 183 yards, no touchdowns. Greg Jennings, 23 targets, only 10 catches, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns. Devonte, 10 targets, 7 catches, 61 yards, no touchdowns. Jordy, 12 targets, 5 catches, 71 yards, and 1 touchdown. Randall Cobb, 5 targets, 5 catches, 73 yards, and 1 touchdown. When it comes to targets of that group, Romeo Doubs third with 16 targets. Catches, he's tied first with James Jones with 14 catches. He's third in yards behind James Jones and Greg Jennings. He has the 5th best average of the group, only better than Devonte Adams at this point, and is tied for second with touchdowns, only behind Jennings, tied with Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb with 1 touchdown. So he's right there in that group of Jones, Jennings, Adams, Nelson, and Cobb through 3 games. Does that mean he's going to be as good or better or worse or anything than those 3? No. Who knows? It's not to compare those 3 long term, but through 3 games, it is a promising start and right up there with some of the best wide receivers of the last, decade and a half for Aaron Rodgers and company. So really nice start for Romeo Doubs. The question is just going to be how high of a ceiling can he reach, because he's already a starter. He's going to continue to be a starter, as I mentioned. And some of the plays that he's making already have you really feeling like they got a steal, absolute steal in the 4th round. I don't think this is going to be something where he's just a flash in the pan and falls off. I think he's going to continue to get better and better. His releases are getting better. The way that he's catching the ball outside of his body, the way that he's accelerating through the catch point. He needs to block better. He needs to get more consistent on his routes. He needs to learn how to get off of press coverage. Those things should come, with time. And like I've said, with Watson and Wyatt and Walker, when it does, look out. He has the ability to be a really, really strong starter in this league. Then we get to Zach Tom. Zach Tom, when he first came, and if you listen to Pack a Day Live, Ross Uglum and Justice Mosqueda and I talked a little bit about this, and Ross mentioned it specifically. When he showed up to training camp, mini camp, OTAs, etc., you would have swore the dude was a tight end. Like, that's how small he was in comparison to the rest of the offensive linemen. I said it from the beginning. I said, this is just a guy that's going to need a year to add some functional strength. The fact that he was sort of in the conversation to be a starter for this team, and I know it was because because Jenkins and Bakhtiari were injured, but the fact he was in the conversation to start, when those guys were out, is such a testament to where he's at with his footwork and his technique and his athleticism, because he was already picking up twists and stunts like a veteran, staying patient in those situations. His footwork's phenomenal. He can get to the second level. He's got great athleticism. He's just not ready yet to hold up at the point of attack. And I know everyone's like, we got to get Zach Tom in. I just don't think physically he's quite ready, and I think he's going to get beat by bigger, stronger players right now. But he will put on strength. He will put on functional weight. And when he does that, I know I sound like a broken record, but look out, because he's got everything else. He's got the footwork. He's got the technique. Of course, he's not a finished product technique-wise, and he's going to still continue to get better that way. But, it's just the one thing that's missing. And when he gets to, 305 and puts on a little bit of muscle, he's going to be able to, hold up at the point of attack better. I'm sure he's going to be able to anchor better in those situations. And then, and the big thing we'll have to see is, how does that affect his foot quickness when he puts on that weight? Is he still the same athlete? I think he's going to be. And I still wholeheartedly believe that Zach Tom is going to be probably a long-term starter for Green Bay. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's the year after. Maybe it's even by end of this year. But I still think he needs to put on some strength. And then once he does, he's going to be a starter. I really, truly believe that. And then maybe the one I'm geeking out most about right now is Kingsley Enagbare. And in a very similar way to Zach Tom, somebody that I looked at the very first practice, and I'm like, he's going to have to put on muscle. He just has to put on muscle. But I'm telling you right now, Kingsley Enagbare, JJ Enagbare, has moves in his arsenal that I wish Rashawn Gary had, that I wish, heck, even Preston Smith, who's a veteran edge rusher in this league, had. He's got a bag of tricks up his sleeve that some of the most nuanced pass rushers in this league are you would be like, okay, that's impressive. I've seen a variety of moves from him. He's willing to throw anything in the kitchen sink at you at any given time. He is mixing things up and setting moves up, one move to another. And I really believe that once he puts on some functional strength, he's going to be bowling through, offensive tackles. And he's going to be able to use strength. He's going to be able to set the edge. He's already edge 3 in Green Bay. He's ahead of Garvin. He's ahead of Tipa. And he's been, I think, above and exceeding my expectations for his rookie season already. That's where he's at right now. There are going to be some offensive tackles that he gets to face at some point this season that he will overwhelm just because he's more advanced than some of the younger offensive tackles that he's going to go against. I am really excited about Enagbare. If they end up moving on from Preston Smith this next offseason due to salary cap issues, if that were to happen, I don't think it's impossible that Enagbare could be the starter opposite Rashawn Gary by next season. More on that in just a moment, but very, very excited about Kingsley Enagbare and his long-term prospects. Just add some functional strength, set it and forget it. The guy is already so advanced with his pass rush moves. He just needs to figure out a little bit, how to attack offensive tackles a little bit better, add some functional strength, and then, like I said, with all these guys, look the heck out. Then we've got our 4 redshirt 7th rounders: Tariq Carpenter, Jonathan Ford, Quay Walker, Samori Toure. All you're hoping for is that one of those guys pans out as a solid starter at some point. If you can get one of those 4 to be an even okay starter, you've done your job. Those are flyer picks. Those are redshirt players. You're just hoping to develop them. Tariq Carpenter, probably more of a hybrid safety linebacker, maybe a Raven Green type role for him at some point. Probably a special teams role first. Not there yet, but maybe he can be that down the road. Jonathan Ford, you're looking at a run-stuffing rotational defensive lineman. Probably in the mold of a Tyler Lancaster with more upside as a pass rusher. Not sure he's going to get there. Flashed some in camp. Just needs a needs to be, Green Bay needs to be patient with him. He's far from a finished product, and you see some of the flashes. He's a big dude, but just doesn't know how to put it all together yet. If he does, I think, a TJ Slayton type comp, maybe a year or two from now isn't that far-fetched, and I think he could be a rotational player for Green Bay. Rasheed Walker, the one that I think has a real chance to turn out. I love that final preseason game from him. I think he has a sneaky chance to become a starting tackle for Green Bay down the road. He's one that I'm keeping an extra eye on. And then Samori Toure, I don't know, probably, a number 5 wide receiver at some point. Again, redshirt guy, showed some flashes. We'll see what he ultimately becomes, but an interesting player that I was very happy they were able to keep around, and think he has some upside. Not sure he's ever going to be a 1, 2, or 3 wide receiver, but certainly has some talent that is worth keeping around and developing and seeing what you can get out of it. So those are your Flyer redshirt guys. You've got 2 undrafted free agents on the undrafted free agent rookies on the team as well. Jack Coco is already the long snapper. I think the verdict is still out on Coco. I've seen some good things. I've seen some bad things. I think it's an improvement from any of the long snappers that they had last season. But I'm not ready to say like he's the next, Rob Davis or going to be here for the next decade. I still think he needs to improve a little bit, but far ahead of schedule for an undrafted rookie free agent long snapper. And then you've got Caleb Jones as well, a complete lottery ticket. Not sure he's ever going to, evolve into anything, but if he could even end up being a, rotational guy, a la Yosh Nijman that you keep around and maybe see if he can develop, not the worst lottery ticket to have on the back end as well. Then you've got 3 rookies on the practice squad. Tyler Goodson, the one I'm most excited about and think he could at least contribute as a number 3 running back at some point. And then you've got Benji Franklin and DQ Thomas, who I'm not even going to pretend that I know enough about because I didn't get to see him in practice in training camp and have not done film studies on Benji Franklin or DQ Thomas. So you can get after me on that in the comments below for not having a full film review of Benji Franklin and DQ Thomas at my disposal. So that's where the rookies are at. If we're looking at this, I said this on Twitter, and I really wholeheartedly believe it. Quay Walker, Devonte Wyatt, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Zach Tom, and Kingsley Enagbare, within the next 3 seasons, this year, next year, and the following year, all 6 of those guys are going to be starters at some point. Now, what level of starter they are will remain to be seen. Quay Walker, and Romeo Doubs we're already getting introduced to and to seeing what they can do, but what ceiling they have, all of those things remain to be seen. But I believe, really truly believe, that this is going to be a 6 starter draft class at minimum. And Sean Ryan and your 7th round, redshirt guys, all of those are Flyer guys. If you told me right now, out of Sean Ryan, Tariq Carpenter, Jonathan Ford, Rasheed Walker, and Samori Toure, out of those 5 guys, heck, add Caleb Jones and Tyler Goodson as undrafted Flyers as well. If out of those 7 guys, they got one more starter out of that at some point, this is a 7 starter draft class, a 7 starter rookie class, I should say. That would be beyond massive. That said, draft classes, while it's great to get starters, it's better to get Pro Bowlers and all pro guys. That's going to be the question, is how many of these guys can develop into top tier starters that are game changers, difference makers for this team. We're seeing flashes from Walker. We're seeing flashes from Doubs. But what you ultimately want is, guys that are top 5, top 10 at their position and can be that consistently. That we don't know. And the jury's going to remain out on all of these guys. But I really do believe that this is at minimum a 6 starter draft class and will end up paying huge dividends down the road for the Packers. And it's already starting to pay dividends this year. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I always appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all new episode. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.